Hello guys, my name is Helena and I'm an English teacher. I specialize in teaching exams, namely IELTS, the International Language Testing System. My experience of working with this exam and preparing students for this exam has shown that writing is the most difficult part of it. That's why I decided to create a course for all of you who are preparing for this exam on how to write IELTS essays. This course has 7 lessons, and here is the first one. This is the first lesson out of 7, so there are 6 more to come. Stay tuned. Here is a quick plan for this lesson. First, I'll talk about the overview for this task, meaning that I'll give you the general information about this task. And then we'll have a look at assessment criteria for the task, meaning the criteria that examiners use to give you a band. Let's get to it. Task overview. The first thing that you need to know is that IELTS Task 2 is a short essay that test takers need to write in response to a given prompt. Let me comment a bit on this. A prompt is the topic that you'll have to write your essay on, and it can look like this. Obesity has become a serious health issue worldwide. Discuss ways to solve the problem. Please mind that in these lessons I'll be using the word prompt rather than the word topic, because it will help us not to get confused in the terms. So what else do you need to know about Task 2? Well, it should be an academic style essay. Academic style means that the language in this essay type should be formal or semi-formal. If you are taking the academic IELTS module, then you need to use formal words and expressions. If you're taking the general module, then it's okay to use some less formal expressions, for example, phrasal verbs, but still, you shouldn't write like you speak. That means that you cannot use contractions. You should use the full forms of grammar words. For example, do not is a full form. Don't is a contraction. You should not use contractions in your essays. Next, the essay should be at least 250 words long. Remember that shorter essays will lose some points. However, if your essay is a bit longer, that's okay. Still, it's an exam task and the time is limited. That means that you need to learn to write long enough essays with at least 250 words within the given time. And that also means that you shouldn't write really long essays, because then you may run out of time and not finish your essay. So how much time can you spend on this task on the exam day? Approximately 14 minutes. Just a quick note for those who are completely new to IELTS and don't know anything about the exam. The writing test will last 1 hour and you'll need to complete 2 tasks. Task 2 is longer and we recommend that you spend 40 minutes on it. Task 1 is shorter and you should spend the remaining 20 minutes on Task 1. Another basic point to remember is that your essay is worth 2/3 of your overall score. With this in mind, a lot of students prefer to start with Task 2 and not with Task 1 in the actual exam, but it's completely up to you after all. So how do examiners give you the band score for this task? Well, they use specific assessment criteria, also known as band descriptors. You need to know these criteria because if you know these criteria, you'll know how to write your essays and what to focus on. For convenience, I'll bring back the essay prompt that we already looked at, and I will also break my screen into 4 sections because there are 4 criteria. The first criterion is task response. What does this mean? It means that you'll get a better score for your essay if you write fully and clearly about the task and the topic that are set in the prompt. One important point here is that all parts of the task need to be addressed. For example, if we look at the given prompt, the topic in that essay was obesity as a problem, and you are asked to discuss ways to solve this problem. And that is exactly what you should do. A common mistake that students make is that they go off topic and off the given task. For example, one of my students, when he wrote his essay on this prompt, wrote about cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. However, these ideas do not address the task, because he had to write about ways of solving the problem of obesity. And he wrote about complications. Cardiovascular diseases and diabetes are the health problems that can be caused by obesity. So with these ideas, he did not address the task, and he would get a low score for his task response. Another point to remember with regards to this criterion is that you need to fully develop and support your ideas. This means that you need to explain why you think something is so and so. A common mistake that students make here is that they present ideas one after another, but they do not explain those ideas. For example, another student of mine wrote this paragraph. It is necessary to remove fast food restaurants. It is important to give people free access to gyms. Also, healthy foods should be cheap. The ideas in this paragraph are on task, but they are not developed. I cannot understand as a reader why is it necessary to remove fast food restaurants, and removing them how? Also, why is it important to give people free access to gyms, and why should healthy foods be cheap? And how all of these actions would help with the problem of obesity? It's unclear. So this paragraph would have a low score for task response because the ideas are not developed. Moving on. The next criterion is called coherence and cohesion. These are quite scary linguistic terms, but in fact they only stand for logical organization and linking of your ideas. To score well in this criterion, you need to write your essay in clear paragraphs. I guess you all know that any piece of writing should be organized in paragraphs, and I'm not going to stop on this point. The next point is that you also need to show a logical presentation of ideas. And this seems easy, but many students have problems with this. For example, one of my students, in her response to the given prompt, wrote this. It is important to improve the quality of life of poor people. Governments provide very little support to poor families. Is there logic here? Not really, because looking at these two sentences, I do not understand how the quality of life is connected to the problem of obesity. And then, how can government support help solve the problem? When I asked the student these questions, she explained that poor people usually have bad diets because they do not have enough money to buy healthier foods like vegetables and fruit. They can only buy rice and potatoes. And when they only eat those foods, they put on weight. So, if governments give them some support, perhaps those people can improve their diets. Now, that explanation makes more sense. But that's not what she wrote. Why not? Because she wasn't careful about the logical development of her ideas. She had those ideas in her head, but she didn't actually write about them logically. And that's a very common mistake actually, so please take care and explain your ideas logically. And one more point for this criterion is that you need to show good use of linking words and phrases. What are they? They are words like first, second, and others, and phrases like another advantage is that, another solution is that, and so on. Now let's move on and have a look at criterion number 3, which is lexical resource. It basically means the use of vocabulary. So what vocabulary should you use in your essay to get a high band score? First of all, it should be formal or semi-formal language. In other words, academic language. The key mistake here is that students begin to write like they speak and often use expressions like kinda, that sort of thing, and others. Please avoid those expressions in your writing, and also, as I've previously mentioned, remember to use full forms of grammar words. Next point is you need to use less common words and expressions. For example, if you use the word diet, that's good, but it's a fairly common word. If you use the word nutrition, that's a less common word, and the examiner marking your essay would notice that. Also, for a band 7 and above, you need to have a range of words and expressions used correctly and appropriately in your essay. Now, a lot of students, to show their vocabulary range, begin to use synonyms, which is the right thing to do. By the way, synonyms are the words that have similar meanings. One thing to be aware of here is that you should be careful when you use synonyms. Very often, students just try to remember a lot of synonyms when they prepare for the exam, and they do not pay attention to their meaning that much. They believe that synonyms are synonyms, right? Actually, wrong. For example, if you go on the internet and try to find synonyms to the word obesity, you'll immediately see words like stoutness or chubbiness. However, these words are not actually synonyms to the word obesity, because the word obesity describes the state of being extremely fat in a way that is dangerous for health. However, stoutness is the same as bulkiness, and it describes somebody with a heavy body type, and that is not exactly the same as obesity, because there is no danger for health when we use this word. Next, chubbiness is actually the property of having a plump and round body. It is often used to talk about babies, and again, it is not a synonym to obesity because there is no danger for health, and it doesn't describe the state of being extremely fat. So stoutness and chubbiness are actually not synonyms to obesity. Now, of course, you'll ask, how is it possible to avoid mistakes like that? How can I use the right synonyms in my essay? And their answer is, check the meaning of words that you're trying to use, that you're planning to use in English dictionaries. These dictionaries will give you a proper definition of the word that you are checking. And also, they give example sentences with the words that you're checking. Read those examples too. They'll give you the right context and a better understanding of the word or phrase that you're looking at. Some of the reliable dictionaries are Cambridge or Oxford online dictionaries. Now, moving on, and let's have a look at the last criterion, which is grammatical range and accuracy. To assess your grammar, examiners will be looking at a variety of tenses and structures. Structures is a more important word here actually, more important than tenses. Why? Because all the topics in IELTS essays are general and you'll need to write about them in general, meaning that most likely you'll have to use only the present simple tense most of the time. It's possible to use other tenses, but present tense will be your key tense. So to show that you know grammar, you need to use complex structures. What are they? These are sentences that have a subject and a verb, and then some kind of connector between them. For example, which, who, if, when, and then there is another subject and another verb. If you've studied English grammar with grammar books, you will probably know these structures as conditional sentences, sentences with time clauses, relative clauses, and other clauses. And that's what you need to use in exam essays to get a good score for your grammar. There are other complex structures in English grammar, of course, but these are the most common ones, and you can get a high score if you use them. Of course, you also need to show correct sentence structure, spelling, and punctuation. And that's it. These are the key points that you need to know about essay assessment criteria. If you wish to know more about them, you can have a look at the detailed tables of IELTS band descriptors that you'll find in the description under this video. I hope you liked this lesson and found it useful. If you'd like to see more lessons like this on this channel, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment on this video. See you in lesson 2.